for joining us today. We are here on our Human Resources Committee meeting to present payroll modernization, the program. Thank you, Councilors Caldwell, with Aldershis, Nave, and Hogan joining today as well. My name is Rita Paniagua.
Great. Thank you, councilors. I'd like to start off by thanking the council for taking us up on our offer to meet about payroll and timekeeping. There's been obviously a lot of discussion about the project, but really our intent here today is to talk about where the project currently is and where it's heading. Happy to answer any questions though that the council might have about the project overall. My name is Corey Dunham. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the city, and I will let the two gentlemen to my right introduce themselves.
Hi, Michael Canizero, Commissioner of Finance.
Hi, good morning. Josh Syerson, Innovation Project Leader for the Office of Analytics, Performance, and Innovation.
And as soon as our presentation is up,
Thank you, Nita. You got the floor.
yes. Just waiting to see if this will be a moment or a few. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Commissioner Canizaro is actually going to kick us off with the presentation, so take it away.
Yeah, so if we could, payroll modernization. So today we're going to be talking about, the last couple of years' efforts as far as digitizing the payroll process. So that's inclusive of payroll, timekeeping, and numerous HR functions. So our first slide up here, and after looking at this, I do, correcting. I think that's a strong term. I mean, with AS400, that's our current payroll processing software and our, human resource information system. AS400 has processed over $1 billion worth of payments for payroll. So, I think correcting is a strong term, but our staff, includes 1,900 to 2,300 employees. We blow up in the summer times because of the seasonal hiring for Parks and Rec. Of those 2,300 employees, 9 different bargaining units, so public safety, police, fire, local 400, CSCA. Each one of those bargaining units has specific rules, specific work rules, specific benefits. So, you're dealing with a different subset for each one of those unions. 32 different departments with operational needs. Parks and Rec needs things that are different than police. Fire needs things that are different than DPW. The city of Syracuse is very unique with just the number of business units we have. And as that last bullet point shows, decentralized paper processes. If you were getting night shift differential and you were sitting in the water department, maybe someone was calculating that differently if you were sitting in the Parks and Rec department. So, as far as correcting this, what we're looking to do is modernize and standardize the timekeeping process. Again, really cannot emphasize how much manual paper goes into this process. We have a weekly payroll, we have a bi-weekly payroll, we're paying thousands of people. The goal is to increase accountability, compliance. As far as our New York State retirement, we want to make sure we're compliant with them. They've pushed forward enhanced reporting. That's a lot of our efforts now is getting to that enhanced reporting. Transparency for employees, they don't know what they're going to get paid next week sometimes. I mean, maybe the overtime was calculated differently, or maybe someone smudged a number on their punch card when it came over to payroll. So, we're cutting numerous manual checks every week for, oh, this overtime got missed last week, or, the hours got screwed up because of the paper-based handwritten processes that, with the number of employees that are working paycheck to paycheck, we want to make sure we're paying them accurately and as much as possible. So, as far as the accountability and transparency there, and then long-term efficiencies for the city of Syracuse, this is a tough one for me to answer because with AS400, payroll is never going to cost less than it does now. It's a 30-year-old system. We don't have license costs associated with it. But long-term efficiency, I think, and sustainability important is right now in payroll, and I'll just say some of their first names. I'm not going to say their last names just for privacy, but Scott, Mary, Cindy, Carrie, Doreen on the IT side, Stan, Kathleen. Again, we have processed over $1 billion of payments in the AS400. Unfortunately, a lot of those people that know how the AS400 works are nearing retirement age. 2 of our payroll clerks are retired employees. One of our AS400 programmers is a retired programmer, and she's working, on the side as our consultant. A couple other of those individuals are very nearing retirement age. So, using a sports analogy, I think payroll's the offensive lineman of the city. There's not an issue with payroll until there is. If the offensive lineman's getting highlighted on the broadcast, it's because they didn't do something. The quarterback got sacked. You never hear, oh, everyone got paid this week. Great, let's clap our hands. Congratulations. No, it's when you missed that check or someone got short pay. That's when that's when payroll comes into the foresight there. So the sustainability is, I think, a very important part of this conversation going forward. And then on the right there, I think that's a Syracuse.com article. Initially, the New York State Financial Restructuring Board, they came in and looked at our timekeeping process and said, you guys are using way too much paper. You have way too many manual processes. It's too prone to error. You need to look at using some type of digital solution. So I think that highlights that slide. Any questions specifically on that?
I have a question. Have we considered giving the employees an app, a pay?
So I think we'll kind of get into that.
We're going to get into it.
Yep.
Okay.
So the specific systems we're talking about here, timekeeping, that's hours. How are we capturing the hours the employee are working? Right now that's done, every department's a little bit different. We have punch cards. That's, an employee's got an actual physical punch card that they are punching the clock. A lot of our biweekly folks are filling out a paper Excel timesheet. You can fill it out, with a pen and submit that via paper, or you can, submit it as an electronic file, as an Excel or a PDF.
Do you have it broken down, like how many people are punched, how many people are handwritten? Do we know like what departments are what?
So I could get back to you with that question. I don't have that specific breakdown in front of me right now, but we do, because especially now, really, in our proposed state in this presentation, every employee will be an SWC, so that's Kronos, outside of sworn personnel. So police and fire sworn will be in Telestaff, which is one of the 2 timekeeping softwares we're talking about today. The civilian employees for police and fire, those again, when we talk about the nuance of departments, we'll get into the weeds a little bit here. But so timekeeping, we're talking employees' hours. Additionally, with timekeeping, an important part here are employee accruals. So your vacation time, your sick time, how are we tracking those accruals? That would be part of a timekeeping system. So I think that kind of touches base for timekeeping. So payroll system, this is the money. This is, where we're performing a calculation. The input for payroll are hours. The rate is, your hourly rate or your salary, and that's going to produce a check. That's what the employee is getting paid. That's what we're, spending over $100 million a year on is paying our employees. Part of that payroll system, we have numerous deductions. That's, your mandatory deductions, so your federal, state taxes. We have retirement deductions, which is, that's basically a mandatory deduction as well. And then, you have garnishments, and we offer a number of other potential deductions. You can contribute to not a 401k, but whatever our government plan is. So those would all be encompassed in a payroll system. And then kind of as far as getting to payroll, that rate as part of that calculation, that would come from the human resource information system. So that's really what's going to store your employee demographic information, their salary information, job title information. Ideally, an HRIS would also include, kind of some org chart information. So as far as managers, supervisors. So these are really the 3 systems we're talking about when we're modernizing. You say payroll modernization, there's a lot that goes into that. I was promoted to first Deputy Commissioner of Finance in January 2022. And that's really when I got assigned to the payroll modernization project. So, I mean, we've been doing this a few years now. A number of employees internally have spent a lot of time, including myself, on this project while we're doing our day jobs as well. So there have been a lot of hours put into this project, multi-departmental effort, finance, human resources personnel, and my colleague to the right here, API, has played a really big part, I think, in this last year as far as some of the progress we've made has really been in part to the guy next to me here. We, again, don't have the resources to do this internally. We don't have, we're talking very specific IT technical experience here that given even, post-compensation study residency requirement, okay, let's hire an HRIS manager that has this, years of experience in Oracle for $85,000 a year. That person doesn't exist in the city of Syracuse. So, we have had to look at external partners as far as getting this project completed. And then the big number on the screen there, approximately $8.1 million has been spent to date on this project. And I would like to say that that $8.1 million has been spread across all of these systems. The time,
I'm Commissioner, does it, 1.5 million, that's exclusive of the 10 million?
8.1 million?
8.1 million?
Yes. So
we're at 8.1 million now.
Yes, and the 10 million number that's been floating around there would be our total contracts. So, open purchase orders. That doesn't mean $10 million has left the...
What about like in-house? Corey.
That internal costs are not included in that $10 million number. Yeah.
So the project team is sort of like limited in what we can do, but, we're obviously making a step forward and
Yes.
spending money.
And internal cost would be staff time?
Staff time. Yeah.
And anything else?
Primarily staff time.
Commissioner, API, how many of the API workers, that department is working with you right now?
I'd say Josh has been the most direct resource, but anywhere between 2 to 3. During this project, some have been, directly involved, some have been indirectly involved. I think as far as really some of that cross-departmental communication, cross-departmental training, that's something that, the HR department can't do on itself. The finance department can't do that. We have day jobs, so that's really where kind of this API department comes in and helps be that liaison as far as rolling out this software to other departments.
Who oversees API? You?
Nico is the chief data and innovation officer.
And just so I know, how many API workers do you have? People that work for API?
So there are, Nico, 6 people, I think, in the innovation side of things, and then there are...
Good morning. Nicolas Diaz, Chief Innovation and Data Officer, Director of the API Department. We have, in all, around 19 people in API, but they're not all on the digital side. On our digital services team, we have approximately 9 or 10 people. Were you asking specifically in this project or in the department as a whole?
So you have 19 total, and they're spread out through different departments, and there's like 3 or 4 that works on? Okay.
Correct.
Just trying to see the workflow chart, like who's going where.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then where with all of that, because I know when API started and it transitioned, it started with Bloomberg, right? Funding years ago. How much of that funding is paying the 19, or is that?
So right now, all the positions are on the general fund. I think we have a few that are funded through Bloomberg for procurement, but I'm not sure if you're including them in the head count.
I am. We received a second grant from Bloomberg a couple of years ago to work with our procurement team. So those are 2 positions that are right now included in that calculation. But those are going away when that grant expires.
Yeah, so everybody
When
else
does the grant
is...
expire?
The end of
This year.
This fiscal year?
Yeah.
Can you get us to like a chart of where all the API workers, so there's 19 of them, but where they're spread out across the?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
So is there, what outside contractors, are any outside contractors involved in this process?
Not currently. I mean,
So
we
this
have
is
we
all
have one
in-house?
through Trevor.
Right now, technically, two.
Trevor.
It'd be Trevor and Kathleen Wilson.
Wait,
is working.
well, yeah, Kathleen. I mean, not Kathleen's not working specifically on this project. She works on the AS400 overall.
Yeah.
And then we,
I think what Councilor Caldwell's point is that, you know, we have these people at API, all these systems, all these payroll systems have evolved over the years, sometimes because of a lack of management by successive administrations. Wouldn't it be like wise to maybe shift a lot of the API people over there to learn as you're learning?
Yep.
Yes.
And we're doing that?
I think that's the goal.
Yes. Yes. Digital services is a portion of API. We have now Nico at the table, and Nico has been at the table about payroll, and now we also have the director of digital
Well, he isn't
services.
at the table, he's sitting
Well,
right over there.
there's only so many seats. But then we also have the director of digital services in the payroll conversation, exactly to your point, Counselor, to build up that capacity in-house.
and then the Ernest & Young contract that we don't have anymore, however, did they are we waiting still for deliverables, or are they all done?
We've ended our relationship with them at the end of January.
They don't owe us anything.
Are they asking for more?
That is an ongoing conversation, Counselor.
So, Commissioner, how far are we from the finish line?
So
Do we want to,
I think, yeah, do you mind if we go through a couple more slides here? And I think we'll go
Sure.
through the timeline a little bit more. So if you could go to the next slide, we're going to talk about kind of the overview of systems. And I'm going to hand this off to my colleague Josh here to talk us through this slide.
And before you go, what's the name of the HRIS that we are pursuing with this?
So right now, our HRIS would be AS400. I mean, that's what our, you know, as far as our employee demographic information, that all resides in AS400. As far as how changes get made in the HRS, it's paper-based. It's a combination of DocuSigns, you know, employee onboarding documentation. So as far as how changes get communicated in the HIRS, I would argue that is a paper-based process.
Okay, and then we are trying to transition out of that paper base into, and that part of that paper base is AS400.
Yes.
What's the name of the software that we are transitioning to within this?
so we're going,
What
I
is it?
mean, the short answer is we're evaluating our options. So
We don't have any.
So I think Josh will speak a little bit to this, but the original path that we were headed on was a product called Oracle Fusion. When, you know, in January of this year, we brought the payroll team together and said, you know, this product did not launch when we had initially set the deadline. Do we still think this is the right product for us? And that conversation right now is ongoing. I think there are growing concerns that the previous product is not the right path for us, but we haven't yet made that final determination. The project had been seen initially as timekeeping and payroll, that both of those things needed to launch at the same time. And when we sat back down with the project team in January, we said, look, we are this close with timekeeping, and that's really what's going to change people's day-to-day. So why don't we focus our time on timekeeping, getting that project up and running, that portion of it up and running, which is what's going to change the vast majority, almost all employees day-to-day. And then let's figure out the right path on payroll. Are we on the right path? Do we want to maybe look at a different system? Because Oracle Fusion, and Josh and Mike can speak to this more than I can, but there's a lot of, it's very intensive in terms of the resources that would be needed that are needed to get it up and running and also to maintain it. And so before we finalize going down that path, let's take a step back just to make sure that's the right path for us. And that conversation is ongoing right now. But in the meantime, we're getting payroll up and running, which I think is what Josh is going to speak to.
So we may still end up with Oracle.
It's possible. I think it's unlikely, but it's possible.
So where does that take us financially?
So so part of the decision-making process right now is looking at the other systems and finding out, you know, what the financial cost would be to those. But I will say, you know, and Commissioner Cannizzaro just mentioned the $8.1 million, you know, that if we decide to shift away from Oracle Fusion, it's not as if that money was all for nothing. You know, all the work that was put into that is information and work that we can use to whatever system we move to. So it's not as if we spent millions of dollars on Oracle Fusion that we're never going to use now. I understand that that's, been maybe a misunderstanding and part of the narrative. That's not really the case. That work that went into, with the anticipated goal of moving to that process is still work that we can take advantage of with whatever system we move to.
Corey, you said that we spent millions of dollars on Oracle that will never be used?
We did not spend millions of dollars on Oracle.
Okay.
We spent money working with external contractors to, sort through all of our processes to try and clean our data to get us in a position where we're ready to move to a new system. What that new system is, though, just to be transparent, we are reevaluating whether or not the path we were headed on is really the right path for the city in the long term.
So we got our money's worth.
So I think that's a matter of opinion, but I think for the project team, I think that money was, was not for nothing. It was spent on what we were going to have to do anyway in terms of cleaning up the data and getting us ready to move to a new system.
Can we get a breakdown of how that
Absolutely.
money was spent?
Yes.
Can you send that to us?
Corey, I'm trying to get convinced here. So if we say Oracle Fusion somehow did some work for us,
So
what is that work?
So it
What is
wasn't Oracle Fusion. It was the consultants the external contractors that we worked with. They did the work. We purchased Oracle licenses. And so the question of whether or not, we're good to share.
I don't know what's going on.
Oops, okay.
The question so it's not, we didn't pay Oracle millions of dollars. We paid external contractors to help us sort through the AS400 and get us to a place where we're ready to move to a new system. So there is a certain cost for the licenses for Oracle that if we decide not to move, then that might be something that, we're just going to have to accept outcome project. But, these are all factors that we're discussing as we're trying to decide which path we go down, which product we choose.
So, Commissioner, what's the cost of Oracle? What is it? How much?
Oracle,
What have we
we've
spent on it
about
with the consultant?
$350,000.
$350,000?
On Oracle licenses. And so if we did move forward with that Oracle Fusion HCM, really what that would have solved is that the right side of the screen there, that HRS and payroll, that's what that software was looking to, replace, really. That's really the conversation we're going to have continue going forward today is what are we looking at for our HIRS and our payroll?
And then it's the licenses, but then there's a yearly renewal.
Which is the licenses.
Yes.
That's the annual recurring cost.
Okay.
Yep.
And also the anticipated external resources that we would need because we do not have confidence that we really have the internal resources to carry Oracle Fusion through, into the future. The concern is that we're building another AS400, and so that another 15, 20 years from now, we're going to be in the same situation, and we don't want to do that. We really want to make sure that what we do is sustainable into the future, and those decisions are ongoing. But I do want to let Josh just give a quick update on where we are with timekeeping, because I think that's...
I've got a whole lot in that.
Okay.
So slide 1, we look at the first slide and you lay out kind of the foundation of how we started down this pathway. And, I don't object to anything up here. Not only do I object, I completely agree we need to bring our, timekeeping, payroll into modern times. What I took note of is the fact that the image up on the screen, the article up on the screen is from 2020. We're 5 years out. That initial $2 million, kind of Corey going down your, 8.1, we didn't lose everything. Marty asked if it was money well spent. You didn't say no. You said we got value, right? And I'm not going to deny that part of that will help bring us to where we're at. But can we walk through 2020 to current, projected timeline, funds spent, what we thought we were going to get, what we did get, what we didn't get, because I'm willing to bet that we did not get $8.1 million of value out of what we spent.
So, we certainly can. It's not something I'm prepared to do today, and I guess part of that is relying on, I know the council has an IT audit underway, which is including looking at the payroll system. So, I'm happy to provide that information if you like. I guess my assumption, and perhaps it was mistaken, was that will all be included in the IT audit because I know they've been speaking with, city staff and looking back at the timeline and doing sort of the retrospective, how did we get to where we are now? So, it's not information that our team is prepared to present today, but if we want to have a conversation, we welcome that conversation.
So I think that's part of the conversation.
Sure.
It feels like this might be a little preemptive. If we're a week or 2 weeks out of that larger piece of context, why are we here today?
Because-
But that aside.
Well, I mean, we're here to talk about where the project is now. I just sent an email out on Friday to employees to assure them that the project is moving forward, because I think there's been a narrative that somehow the city spent $10 million, it didn't launch, and so we've walked away from it and we're no longer doing timekeeping and payroll, which is just not the case.
Right.
Our team continues to meet, timekeeping, and it's in the presentation, but, is rolling out in the water department. We've scheduled a rollout with parks, then it'll be DPW, then it'll be City Hall and One Park Place. So I think our attempt here is to update the council and the public about where the project is now, given that there's been so much discussion the past few months. We want to make sure that the council is aware, and, everybody is aware, that we didn't just spend the money and then walk away and say, well, that didn't work out. The project continues to move forward and continues to make progress.
So I guess now we jump to the slide.
Sure.
I'll
Wait,
accept
I have
that.
a question.
I was gonna say, in a second-
Before we go to the slide,
Yeah.
because like the rest of the counselors, in order for us to understand this, we got to know what we have happened before. We can't. It's sort of hard to make a decision moving forward about, and not questioning that you guys aren't doing what you guys need to do,
Sure.
but to move forward on the next step when we don't know what's going on prior. Now, my question with the Oracle fusion, if it doesn't work, what are we doing to prevent, like, what is the process elimination we're doing to prevent us to not be back in the same situation? Like, what is the goal plan?
Yes.
So we don't just waste money again.
Can I
part of the
add to that?
presentation
before-
today.
Yeah.
Can
So
I
I think-
add, can I
yeah, go
add
ahead.
to that
Yes.
so that you can answer it all in one? So it seems to me like the Oracle is module-based, just like AS400.
AS400,
And from past meetings, you guys stated that you had not unlocked different modules to get the full capacity of the entire system. Is that going to be a problem with Oracle as well, where some of these modules aren't being utilized to the full capacity, where you need to go to the next level with certain softwares? So is
Do you
that
mean
going to be?
that was it PeopleSoft that had modules we weren't using?
Oh,
Yes.
PeopleSoft,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know if you can,
Yeah, so PeopleSoft is really the general ledger and accounts payable and accounts receivable. So we could move towards PeopleSoft HCM. That's what the county is using right now. PeopleSoft will be end of life in 9 or 10 years. And PeopleSoft HCM is one of the things we are considering as far as replacing the Oracle Fusion.
But
we didn't
if my recollection is correct, when our former chief Frank,
administrative,
Yes.
yeah.
Administrative officer.
Administrative officer, yes.
when he was here, one of the things that he emphasized, first of all, we keep hearing the word, we are moving forward. We
Right.
are moving forward.
Yep.
And as we sit here, I'm hearing the same thing, we are
Yep.
moving forward. And we are $8 million in hole, and we are moving forward. And it seems like as we move forward, it seems like we just keep throwing money into the hole, and we are moving forward. But when Frank was here, part of the drive to want to get to fusion and other things was what you just mentioned, Commissioner, that PeopleSoft was phasing out. There wasn't much time left to it. And I'm surprised that we still have a conversation, in our conversation, PeopleSoft, when it was the main reason that because it's phasing out, that's why we are looking to move forward. Why are we still having a conversation with PeopleSoft?
I can't speak to statements made by the former chief administrative officer, but I think if you allow us to get through a couple more slides in the deck here, really what we're trying to do today is, this is where we're at today. Right now, today, April 14th, 2025, and this is where we would like to be in 6 months. And I think this is, you hold us accountable, that we come back here in 6 months and say, hey, this is what you showed us in April. Are you there? Hopefully, yeah. Look, these are this is the progress that we've been promising you that we have made. I think that's the point of the presentation today. Again, we can relitigate the past as much as we want. I think we can all agree mistakes were made. But what we are trying to do today here is showing this is how it's working today. this is where we hope to be in 6 months, and then if you will let us, this is where we hope to be a year from now.
I think, Commissioner, I think you're right there, but I think this is a change in strategy.
Yep.
While all my counselors are talking about tactical issues, but we're talking strategic here. And like, we're going to go away, because you're going to have to come to us if you want to hire
Yeah.
somebody.
Exactly.
And we might say no. And I think that this change in strategy, where we're actually using in-house resources, which will be notably less expensive than outside contractors, begs, the question, why didn't we do this in the beginning?
Right. And to Councilor Caldwell's question about like what's different this time, without speaking to the project prior to my coming on time, because I wasn't involved in it at that point, I will say I think at least speaking to how the project has operated from, the beginning of the year until now, it's letting the folks that know the systems best make the decisions, and my role, what I see for them is supporting them with the resources that they need, anything that I can do, but really allowing Mike and his team, Commissioner Cannizzaro, who knows payroll best, API, in partnership with digital services, HR, allow them to drive the decision making, and really allowing all options on the table. So to your point, Counselor, why are we still talking about PeopleSoft? It might be a very short conversation, but I really want to make sure, and I think the team does, that we're not eliminating any options because it's somehow tied to what has happened in the past. So we're trying to take, a fresher approach to Counselor Williams' point, a project that has been going on for a very long time. To the degree that I can share what we've been doing differently, that's what we have tried to do differently.
So in the interest of time, let's try to get through the
Sure.
slides, and if we need to tie this back to history, then we will at that point.
So I think it's important, I guess, now that we've talked through a lot of these items, I think it's important to point out, in terms of those $8 million that have been spent, I'd say it's about a 50-50 split between timekeeping on the left side and the HCM on the right side. So timekeeping being probably at this point the biggest, thank you, timekeeping at this point probably being the biggest success of the project so far. So those two systems, SWC on the one hand, Telestaff down at the bottom, those are the ones that are, Telestaff is already launched at this point. It's already being used by police and fire at this point. So that is a major step forward. SWC, there's been progress over this last year, which I can go through on the next slide a little bit further. I think that's kind of where you see that this money that has been spent, this time that's been spent, has been moving us forward, and I can speak to the results of that on the next slide. It's that right-hand side that though some money has been spent there, those systems haven't really been ready to launch yet, but that doesn't mean the money that has been spent has been for nothing, because I think those things that we've gotten from that are going to be much more easily applied to the future system. And by the way, it's going to be a lot easier to launch that once we have a strong foundation of timekeeping that we can build upon.
So if we just bid out those things that we've gained, how much would that cost? Right? We have this umbrella of we haven't lost everything. We've gained certain things, right? Like, let's say we put out an RFP just to do the data cleansing and mapping and all that. How much would it cost?
I don't know that I'm in a position to answer that question.
Not really comfortable answering that question either.
Yeah.
Less than we've paid?
Probably.
Thank you.
Where does DPW fall in with the SWC? Because that was a big concern prior, and that
Right.
was where a lot of the staff in those departments were expressing how to utilize the system, and they seem to be ignored.
Right, so DPW is one of the departments that will be using SWC, and that's the next operational department that we'll be engaging with. We're already kind of done with our engagement with water at this point. We're now in a testing until we're ready to go live and pay off of it, but we're comfortable with where we're at in water. Parks is next up, and we've already kind of begun that engagement. DPW would be soon to follow.
Is it best practice to operate in two environments?
Between Telestaff and Syracuse Workforce?
I think Telestaff was specifically designed for public safety, just with their 24-hour operation, some of their different scheduling challenges, I'll put it. It would be difficult to get public safety in SWC. You would have to do a lot of custom configuration to get SWC to basically where Telestaff is, if that makes sense. But no, ideally, I would like one timekeeping system.
Right.
I think this is, for the city, this is the best we can do.
So if we drive down the road to Rochester, Buffalo, are they operating in two environments?
I would have to reach out to them and ask.
But I think it's important just to mention Rochester because Rochester's been in a similar position than we have in trying to launch a modernized payroll timekeeping system.
The Rochester School
The
District.
school district. So, I mean, you know, we are not alone in this being a longer timeline than anticipated.
For what it's worth, it is also true that Telestaff is in the same software, like it is another UKG platform. So it's not a wholly different system from SWC, and they're designed to work well together.
Slide.
All right, so this is kind of a timeline of my involvement so far in the project. I came on March of 2024 last year, and this was at a time as we were working on Oracle at the same time as Telestaff, at the same time as SWC, and we had to kind of straighten out which things were working and which ones weren't, and which things to spend the time to move forward on. So SWC had been paused. It has kind of been rolled out in these departments in the past through some like false starts that have happened, but it was essentially paused, and I was evaluating it in the water department. So the API office did this over the month of April in 2024. Our initial evaluation was essentially comparing the new systems numbers to what paper timekeeping was producing, and we found that there was only about a 60% match between those two. So obviously nowhere close to being able to pay off of this system, and we had to kind of shed light on what is the right way forward here. Is it because the system is built wrong or because people are using it wrong or what exactly? So that evaluation essentially shed light on the way forward, which really was a combination of both those things that I mentioned. We needed to have a system that did things better, that had our policies more correctly configured inside of it. So that kind of kick-started a couple-month-long reconfiguration, getting all of our policies correctly into the system. And then once that work had been done, it also entailed a whole new training effort because what had been done prior was insufficient. So through that testing, training, and kind of relaunch that we did, again, this was in a world where we were going to be launching this simultaneous to Oracle coming online. So we had gotten SWC now to this place where it was parallel testing at 98%, and that was where we were feeling very comfortable with where the system is at, and that it's functional enough to do this timekeeping function for us. So
at 98%, will it go live at 98, 99, or do we have to get to 100?
So we went live in December, and the primary reason why we kind of went back to paying off of paper is we were supposed to go live with Oracle on January 1. So as far as some of those accrual integration, AS400 was never supposed to take the accruals from SWC. It was never supposed to calculate the accruals because we were planning on Oracle. So really what we've done now, and this is thanks to Central City Data Services, we're building some additional integrations in the AS400 to take those accrual balances from SWC. So really, the SWC will play nice with AS400. So this is a kind of a short-term cover gap solution of what some strategic work we can do right now as far as reprogramming to make payroll's life and all of the departmental payroll aides. How do we make their life easier? So this was a very $30,000. I don't want to say low cost, but we thought this was a strategic investment in the AS400 given where we are with the payroll project. And then additionally, one of the big things we're looking at with the AS400 is getting that New York State local retirement system, that enhanced reporting out of the AS400. So again, this is New York State mandated reporting that we are a year late on now, that ideally we will get that reporting out of the AS400, which that reporting was not successfally validated out of Oracle, and it was one of the main reasons why we did not go live.
And that's the 2%, the misalignment?
Oh,
or do
the
we know what
misalignment
the
on
2%
the parallel test, I would argue that 98% is more accurate than the paper timesheets. There was SWC was too accurate. We had people punching in early. And so the 7 a.m. shift, you punch in at 6:30, it's going to register you for overtime for 15 minutes. Well, the paper time card doesn't have that because they have you starting at 7 a.m. Well, you got there at 6:30. You should be getting paid at 6:30. So again, 98%, I would say, is more accurate than the paper.
So like a person tells you to come in earlier, you've been authorized.
Yes,
So
you would get
do
paid
put-
overtime. Yes,
Right,
yes. The
instead
goal
of
is-
having the old-fashioned way, you just got to initial the time card or whatever.
Really, we're comparing hours on the paper, the paper versus the hours from SWC. And really that 2% difference there, it was flagging these, a number of employees were getting small 15-minute increments of overtime. That was them clocking in at 6:30 as opposed to, I think we're allowing 7 minutes. So if you have a 7 a.m. shift, you need to clock in at 6:53. Because if you clock in at 6:51, it's going to round down to 6:45, which again is going to prompt that overtime, which that is
So
not
it
the goal.
won't say you've punched in too early,
Well,
right?
then it's incumbent on the manager to, adjust their
Right.
employees' time.
Okay.
And you mentioned we're going to Parks next. Do we, when we roll it out to Parks, do we start at 98% in terms of, or do we go back down to that 60%?
I think it's anyone's guess to some extent, but I think that a lot of what drove the 60% figure was that so many things in the system had been broken back then. So those are not broken this time, so I expect it to start at a higher floor. But I also know that there's kind of a learning curve when it comes to doing it off of paper now and in a system. There's different tools you've got at your disposal. So as that learning curve happens, I expect it to go from, somewhere probably in the 80s, if we're being realistic at the beginning, to 100.
And how much is driven by human behavior compared to the connections being made within the platform?
At this point, it should be all within, should be totally possible to reach that 100% if someone is using it correctly.
So, and do we have training for each of these employees to interact correctly?
Yes,
And who's providing that?
digital services, the division and API. All right, so here's kind of a look at basically what we're moving away from on the paper timesheets. So that's just, imagine that picture in the upper right there. That's what a lot of people's time is being tracked on, and that's how some of those, that 2% that we're talking about, it's a lot easier on a paper timesheet to say, oh, I got there at 7:30 or I left it at 5 p.m., whatever it says there. You're probably going to be estimating some of those times versus now we're going to be paying off of precisely when the person punched in and punched out of their shift that day. So again, that's kind of what we're moving away from. And if you see in the bottom right, that's the cleaned up digital version of this time card, which by the way, it's easy to quickly see at a glance, months ago's time card. Whereas today, if we wanted to find that, you'd have to dig through files and files to find the actual paper timesheet from that day. So it really doesn't afford you the ability to look at that data in any helpful way. So SWC is the system again that we're feeling good about where it's at design and build wise. It just needs to be finished implementation across the city. And with that integration with the AS400 that Mike mentioned, we are now going to be removing that piece of the puzzle where before it was paper timesheets and clerks and aides had been compiling those into spreadsheets, and then that spreadsheet got sent to payroll, and payroll by hand keyed in those numbers into the system. So now it's just going to be data that feeds in automatically and reduces some of that chance of human error when that happens. Then down at the bottom, just another thing to note, some of that money that had been spent was spent on telestaff, which again, it's kind of a same software family as SWC, but just has much more advanced scheduling capabilities for these departments that require it.
So can we go down that pathway? So I love the image that you showed before. The way that my brain works is in boxes and arrows, and so I like the flow chart. I'll ignore the right half. We'll talk about timekeeping, which is the SWC and the telestaff. You mentioned roughly a half and half breakdown. How much has been spent on all timekeeping modernization? Only the timekeeping. And then can we get the divide between telestaff and SWC?
LSF and FWC, trying to separate that out is going to be difficult just because of the consultants. So we have one slide later in the slideshow. To get those specific costs, I would like to get those to you at a later date.
Ballpark, can you?
I would say on timekeeping, probably $3.5–4 million. Is that, yeah.
So pretty much
Yeah.
down the middle.
Yeah.
There was another software that was discussed before. I can't remember the full name of it. I believe it started with a D.
Dayforce? Dayforce?
Yeah, Dayforce.
Yeah.
What happened with?
So right now, we're kind of taking a deep breath on the HCM side, and I think Josh we've been kind of demoing different potential platforms. So, that includes Dayforce, that includes the UKG payroll software, that includes PeopleSoft HCM. So this is the HCM component of what we already have that the county maintains. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple others. Workday, even looking at outsourcing payroll to ADP and what would that look like? So, really it's, what are all the options here? And then trying to put together some type of cost analysis of what makes the most sense for the city given our resources. Because if we said, okay, yep, we want Oracle HCM and we're going to move forward with that in January. Okay, council, are you going to approve 3 full-time Oracle HCM programmers at $150,000 a year? Because that's the path we were going down, was that the actual sustain and support cost of Oracle for an organization our size was hundreds of thousands of additional internal if we can hire them. And if not, okay, well, we're paying, $300 an hour to external consultants to support our payroll system. That again, I go back to that offensive lineman analogy. It's not an issue until it is an issue. And then that's when, okay, we can't get payroll out. The cops didn't get paid, firefighters didn't get paid. How do we fix this? Then it's bringing in someone last second, and it's going to cost millions of dollars to try to get payroll out. And then we're in an awful situation. So, a lot of this is AS400 breaks. Everyone retires. How do we get payroll out? I'm the commissioner of finance, and I can't answer that question. This is us doing our contingency planning of how do we move forward in the 21st century with making sure we're getting our people paid accurately and correctly and timely. Because, my one goal is to make sure the guys with the guns get paid timely. That was supposed to be a joke. But, so, as Commissioner of Finance, that's the goal, is making sure our employees are getting paid accurately and timely.
And also, as Finance Commissioner, you're overseeing the payroll department, which is kind of unusual in a lot of businesses. But you, as Finance Commissioner, have to oversee the payroll department. I just can't scratch my head. That shouldn't be your responsibility. You should,
I wear a lot of hats.
For both of you guys, just so I can understand it and the people understand, do most people through the city have a basic, set hours? Like, for instance, when I work, I work a job, I know I got to be there at 7, but if I come in at 6:30, that's on me. Is that, is most, everyone's hours?
It mainly, and guys jump in here, I think it mainly matters if you're someone who's eligible for overtime. I could stay in City Hall 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to, I'm not somebody who's eligible for overtime. I think that's really where the distinction comes in, is if you're somebody who's eligible for overtime. I would say, probably the majority of CSEA employees, I would say, generally keep a regular schedule. They're still eligible for overtime, but I think they usually are keeping a more regular schedule, whereas Local 400, crew leaders, middle managers, obviously police and fire, they're operating, much differently.
And just some of the challenges. So police and fire with their shifts, their regular schedule during a 2-week period changes every 2 weeks. So you'll see regular hours in telestaff for a police officer, let's say 120 hours for a 2-week period, and then the following week there's 80 hours. So, you balance those during, the year they're working a full-time job, but then now police officers get paid overtime as well. So when those hours come in, are you paying them an hourly wage? No. For their regular hours, we're going to treat them as a salaried employed, but they have hourly elements because they have their overtime hours come in that they get their normal rate of pay for those. So just as far as the nuance in payroll and some of the different things coming out of the departments, that's, police and fire, we'll treat them like salaried employees. Don't look at their regular hours because we know they have weird shifts, but then they have to get paid overtime. So, trying to get that programmed into a system, that's what we're trying to do.
And with the new systems, everyone will be able to have this on their mobile devices?
So the timekeeping software, would have a mobile application. We are, I think, proposing that.
In terms of where we want to be with the timekeeping, how much more money needs to be invested to get where we want to be with just that portion? I guess time and money to get timekeeping past the finish line.
Conservatively, I think probably a couple $100,000 more. And yes, timekeeping. And that's, we're rolling it out to DPW and parks. Josh has been great. I would like to think we're done configuring the system at this point. We've been doing this a long time. I don't want to say like, oh, no, it's 100% configured. So, I mean, there might be a proposal thrown out to you guys, oh, we need some additional configuration because we found things in those departments. But other than that, I think our internal team and some of the other internal resources you've already approved, kind of being, Kathleen on the AS400 side and Trevor Grant on our, technical finance IT side, if you will.
So if my recollection served me well, over time when we have talked about this system, part of modernization was to look at the talent management side of things, the recruitment and all of that.
Yes.
Which in the past that AS400 didn't really have the capability to do it.
Yep.
Now, as we transition forward, have we figured that out yet, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so those will become part of whatever HCM solution we go to. And to Councilor Jones-Rouser's point, we want to make sure that we're only getting the modules that we are going to use and we know that we need, to have a modern workplace. So we don't intend, where there is no... We only intend to get the modules that we know we want and that we know we're going to use and need. So HCM, that was the, there's timekeeping, and then there's HCM, which includes payroll and HRIS, is kind of how we've broken it down. So that HRIS, that's human resources. To your question, Counselor, that's where, talent acquisition, that's recruitment, that's performance management. There's a whole host of, even something as simple as, I move and I need to change my address. Right now I need to fill out a form to go to, HR, and this is information, if I want to access benefit information, if I want to, all of that would be available, which is really, what we need to have in order to be a modern workplace. So all of that would be included.
We have a slide in the back that kind of details all those additional modules.
I think what the commissioners had said previously, it's an interesting dichotomy in as much as you basically said there's impediments to city employment, and it ends up costing us more money because we have to go outside the city, because we're in competition with private industry and everything else as far as what we pay people, and we're not able to access that highly skilled task force or that workforce sometimes. Correct?
Yep, I would agree.
So, and who's going to be overseeing the implementation for water?
So water's implementation had started, I think, years ago at this point, but the most recent versions of this that I've been a part of has been really the API office, including digital services, who've been moving that forward, and in collaboration with finance to make sure that we've got the data flowing correctly. But at this point, it's essentially implemented there. We just need to make sure that user compliance is at 100% before we can cut over.
So, just to build on that, Counselor, so, Josh has led, the team. We've sat down with the Commissioner of Water. Then we sat down with the management at Water to make sure that they have any concerns or any questions. Then there's a training for the managers. There's 2 different trainings for the managers. Then there's a training for the employees. So, we're really trying to make sure that it's thorough, that we're giving people an opportunity to ask questions, voice concerns, ask why we're doing this, but move the water department forward. And so I think we're almost there in terms of the water department. There's still always things to work out, and that's why you do a phased approach. But, a credit to Josh and Exona and API Digital Services that are really leading the training and making sure that it's a comfortable environment for employees to ask questions and voice concerns.
So the $200,000 that you're talking about, timekeeping, implementation, is that per department as we move forward, or just?
No, that would hopefully be like total system
Total.
cost. Yeah, I mean, it would probably be attributable to, we found something in DPW that we need some additional configuration on. Again, I'm just being conservative. There's nothing right now that I'm like, we need to get an outside consultant involved. I think internally we have it under control. Just, given how long we've been in this project, I don't want to tell you that we don't need any more resources.
But
because
barring
we might.
anything.
Yes, yes.
We might not need to expend any more external resources, but to the Commissioner's point, better be safe and just say, just in case. But again, we haven't seen anything yet to indicate.
So on the SWC, I mean, you've been keeping track of if it's working well with water already? I mean,
Yeah, so
because
we're going.
we don't hear that.
We're going through our second round of parallel testing right now that I think we're just under 90% accuracy, which again, we think that's primarily user error or someone not touching a button they're supposed to. So yeah, I mean, we're proposing paying off of water at the end of the month.
Sort of a pilot, so we learn from their mistakes or ours?
Yes, exactly.
And
Are we
how do
keeping
we
track of that?
remedy the inaccuracies that,
Right, that was
you know,
just...
they'll be minor, but, you
Oh,
know,
is it truly a system issue or is it, user error? I mean, we'll be working collaboratively with the departments. I haven't gone through the most recent parallel tests, so I can't speak to what's driving some of those differences. But I find it hard to believe we're not going to get back up to that 98, 99% accuracy before going live.
When it goes live, I hope Josh gets overtime.
Yeah. Well, he's salaried, so.
You don't have any concerns, like, there's no other concerns that you guys are worried about with this
On the
system?
timekeeping front?
Yeah.
It's changed. I mean, we've had an internal deadline for, hey, submit your timesheets to payroll by noon on Tuesdays. Guess how many departments don't submit their timesheets by noon on Tuesdays? So,
So more to people, not like the software. So you're more the transition, the change.
yes, I mean, we're really, I think one of the hard deadlines now we're saying is, all time needs to be approved by noon on Tuesday. And then as Josh was kind of detailing earlier, the input, all the manual typing goes away. Those hours from SWC are going to populate the AS400. So if you had, 40 regular hours, 10 hours of overtime, there's no typing. There's no chance that that's going to, I forgot the zero and you're only getting paid 4 regular hours. That's going to, integrate seamlessly. So yeah, I mean, sorry, what was your question again? I just get so excited thinking about timekeeping.
You answered it. I just wanted to know,
Okay.
like,
People, not
yeah, like,
Yeah,
it's the
people.
people, not software.
the
It's more of
hitting
a concern of the people, not software.
approval at noon on Tuesday. That's my biggest concern is people aren't going to be hitting the button by noon on Tuesday.
Is the process elimination for some of the systems, is it based on finances or ease of migration?
I think it's both, and I mean, look to Josh and Commissioner Canizaro. It's how much is it going to cost? What's it going to look like to transition to a new system? And also, is it sustainable in the long run? I think that's really something that we just want to be mindful for. That mindful of in the best interest of the city, we want to choose a system that is going to last us and not be reliant on resources that we might not have.
Do we have another slide to
There
go
is
through?
one more, I think.
So you can answer
So
my
this
question.
is, this is just the
Thank you.
overview of the timeline, but I know we're coming up on time, so I think there's just one more.
Just some of the benefits, I think we've talked through this throughout the presentation. Short term, I mean, you have departmental payroll clerks right now that are compiling time on paper, that ideally that goes away. Midterm, just a more sustainable solution that we can, not worrying about our entire workforce retiring, that we can still get payroll out. And then longer term, I mean, tracking hours, one of my goals is how do we maximize our grant reimbursements? The fact that we're getting hours communicated on paper right now, okay, we're paying those hours, and we're not tracking those hours anywhere else. If a Parks employee has someone that's working on a grant, how do we track those hours more appropriately that we're getting reimbursed by that grant? So really maximizing grant reimbursements going forward, tracking some of this time, I think, as far as our software ecosystem, we can't do that in AS400.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready for doing something like other companies are doing, have an app. We just don't have the ability to do that right now.
I think, the SWC, we are proposing different types of swiping in. I mean, depending on if you get overtime or not, you would actually, swipe in at a clock that's mounted on a wall. And then some of our other unions, we are proposing punching in on a computer. So you would have some different options there.
Yeah. So using a Chronos, or even if you have to use a time card.
Yep.
It's probably more, maybe better, because, the problem with an app, though, is you have to be, and I'm learning it firsthand, it can be difficult to use. You know, there could be errors. You might have a breakdown, no Wi-Fi, and it goes to a lot of issues.
So one of the questions, thank you for all this information, but one of the questions that people want to know and the community wants to know, like financially, how is this going to be something that we're going to sustain? Like, what is our yearly cost? And how much more are we really going to have to spend to get this to where you're comfortable? You guys are the ones that are working on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think historically, IT has changed so much over the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, historically, it was you invest in infrastructure, you buy, your hard thing that you put in a room, and then you hire programmers internally to manage that. Whereas now, I mean, as we're all used to, like, streaming services, you're paying a monthly license cost. So that could be given my experience at the city, doing some type of software as a service, a SaaS model, giving our challenges in kind of IT support makes more sense. And I think that's what we're looking towards. I mean, the cost of payroll today, if you factor in salaries and maintenance and just everything, it's a few $100,000 a year. Ideally, the future state, it's going to cost more. Everything's going to cost more in the future than it did in the past. Why have we not invested in payroll? Because payroll is getting out, but I mean, there's obviously long-term concerns as payroll getting out that we need to make sure, how do we make sure payroll gets out for the next 30 years? The last 30 years were covered, but going forward, I think a SaaS model is what we're looking towards, primarily just because we wouldn't need to hire internal IT staff to manage it. That's all included in that pricing model. So, I mean, license costs probably annually for HR and payroll, somewhere in $500,000 range to a little bit more than that. As far as building out a new HCM, probably $1 million. I mean, maybe that's a little high, maybe, somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million, I think, in a cost for an implementer for a new HCM. And then I guess if you could go a couple more slides, if you can go to the what is HCM slide, I think that would be helpful. That's Counselor Williams' slide we just went by. So what is an HCM? A lot of these things we are not doing today. So, we have addresses, we have hourly rates, we have, social security number. We don't have any benefits software. We don't have a position management software. Absence management, kind of an AS400 timekeeping, kind of wonky, doesn't really work that well, not updated properly. An employee, I know our finance secretary emails the W-2s out because she gets the file, but it's 2025. An employee should easily be able to, I know, with tax season, all my, banks, you just go to the website and pull your W-2. Well, you have to wait till we mail it out to you because we don't have it electronically. Like, no, that should be an employee self-service. I should go log on, be able to just grab my W-2, and I don't have to worry about it. And I got an email from an employee on Friday afternoon being like, oh, I'm missing my W-2. And I'm like, tax deadline's on Tuesday. What are you doing? So there's a lot of things.
You don't have to put me on blast like that.
Yeah.
You could have just said.
There's a lot in this HCM that we're not doing today that we're hoping will be a more successful organization with some of these additional modules that, again, we're not doing in the AS400 at all today.
And those are some things, that's why I brought up Dayforce, because those are some things that, like, I know Dayforce covers all of these items. So that's why I was asking, like, the process of eliminating some of these services, what was the...
And those are the conversations that we're having with some of the potential other systems is it all or nothing? Can we build something a la carte that, we can choose which modules really better fit, what we're looking for, as opposed to getting a whole package and, it's got half stuff that, we don't really need.
I'll just say that I'm a tech dummy, okay?
Yeah.
And again, I've used Dayforce. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I was able to, access and understand a lot of the items. So I'm just putting that out.
Right.
Commissioner, just for you. So
Yeah.
with the new systems, and one of the things that you guys mentioned is that it's going to change easier, make it easier for departments. So in all these departments, there was somebody great doing all this other work that's hearing. What happens with that and where do they go?
So, I mean, Mike can speak probably more to the specifics. I will say there's never a lack of work that needs to be done. So, there is no plans for, well, this is going to eliminate positions or anything like that. I think it's really, a lot of these folks, payroll might not even be in their job description, but they've been, helping out and filling in for us. But I mean, Mike can speak a little bit more to the specifics, but it's not as if, we're counting job loss as a factor here.
Yeah, I mean, every department outside of DPW where there is a kind of higher dedicated payroll individual, the administrative function of compiling timesheets is really an indirect responsibility that's fallen on, various titles in the department. So really, if a department has a secretary, usually it's them. It could be an admin assistant. Timesheet compilation is not a full-time job for anyone today. So really, it's that secretary in the department that their Monday and Tuesday now is timesheets, whereas in the future you get that time back. So Parks and Rec, you get your secretary back on Monday and Tuesdays. We don't have to worry about this administrative function that gets done, every week, every 2 weeks. That now you get your employee back. The specific DPW individual, her job title allows other finance activities as well. So we have some stuff lined up for her.
Corey, one last question. You keep saying that we're in the discussion of, tailoring whatever it is we want to move forward with. Mm-hmm. To be able to move forward, that decision needs to be made. Mm-hmm. So when are we making this decision?
So, I mean, I anticipate us having a decision in probably the next 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, it's to Commissioner Canizaro's point. This is payroll. This is a really important decision, and we want to make sure that we're, making the right one, and want to be fully transparent with the council. Let the council know whether we've narrowed it down to these two, or we've narrowed it down to this one, and here is why. Here's what the folks that know this process best, which I'm not one of them, are telling us why this is the right choice for us. We want to make sure that we're being transparent and letting everyone know our reasoning for why we're selecting one over another, assuming that we go down a different path.
So as soon as you know, we'll know.
What's that?
As soon as you know,
yes,
we will know.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Counselor.
And is that in the budget that we have in front of us now?
So there is, I think, some anticipation of a budget, but of what we anticipated paying, but just kind of based on talking to different companies and seeing, if we were to go, what do you anticipate? But, that's obviously a factor too, because if something comes back and it has, some really high upfront price and we don't have, a budget, we don't have it in the budget, that's going to be a factor in our decision.
And the capital plan was a little while ago. I don't remember what, but there was a value in there.
So yeah, and the capital plan can help pay for the implementation, but the capital plan cannot pay for licenses. Oh. And so that needs to come out of the operating budget. So so we need to make sure that, whatever system, if we decide to move to another system, whatever that system is, that we're able to navigate it through where we are now. And if we really feel like it's the right move and, we need to come back to the council to have the conversation about, making it work budget-wise, then obviously we would do that.
And I just want to add to that I wasn't saying, only get certain modules. I'm saying, we need to be making sure that we are getting modules so
Absolutely.
that we can be fully compliant
Right.
or, fully accessible.
Right, yeah. I mean, yes, to your point, Counselor, we don't plan to skimp, and get a lesser product. We want to make sure that we're striking a balance between, where we want to go as an employer and what information our employees should be able to access, and, not getting more than we really need.
So these licenses, does each department make their own ask of what they will need? Or how does that work?
Basically, every employee gets a license. I mean, so you would be an employee for the city of Syracuse, you would need be a licensee.
Right. So then we buy these licenses in a bulk, so it's probably more cost effective.
Yep.
But if we don't use them right away, do we lose them?
So those are the conversations we're having with some of the vendors that we're talking with is, when would we actually need the licenses? Because if the prep work is going to take the first 6 months of the project, well, we're not going to buy the licenses until, unless there's, until we need them, and figuring out how does that impact the price of the licenses. These are all factors that, to your point, that we're taking into consideration in the
Because then
conversations.
we have to pay an annual
Right.
renewal.
Right.
And if API grants are over in June, right? Are they in this year's budget, coming up budget? Did you add them to the budget so that part of?
Yeah,
they're part
so-
of our
The
so
budget?
salary costs would be
the-
reflected in the budget. Yep.
Yes.
How many positions, do you know?
So there were 2 positions that were grant funded that, the positions will cease when the funding ceases, but everybody else who is in API and digital services, the subset of API, are all on the general budget, so you will see them.
Then, so, one last question.
Yes.
So we saw
You
the
said
work
that 5
plan.
minutes.
We saw the work plan that you presented, 24, 25, your timeline. We have seen that before. It didn't really pan out that well. So what are we doing differently to make sure this time you're going to really achieve your goals? What are we doing differently?
The 3 different. There you go.
So it's up on the screen for
Yeah.
a sec. Is this the one that you had in mind, or are you thinking of the work?
No, the one that it just lined out, March,
The
April.
one that has, I think it has the 60 and the 98%.
That one.
Right. So what I can't speak to those past attempts because I wasn't here for those ones, but what I can say here that's a little bit different is that this is stuff that has already been done. So that's a good thing. When it comes to implementing in those other departments, like getting to parks, getting to DPW, and making sure that those launches are successful, I think now we have just been through it with water before. We know what it takes to have it be have it stick the landing essentially. So I think we've learned from some of those past lessons. We've got the resources now as part of the team. We've put a lot of work into this over the last year, and so we feel better about those going forward. I think if you have concerns about the HCM side of this project, that's what I think we're taking our time right now to not launch prematurely down another path that's going to get us into a similar situation.
And to just second Josh's point, and I think a lot of credit goes to Josh and API, especially over this last year. I think we have the right people in the room now. I think just the departmental collaboration has been a lot better. Josh is down at Water 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, we're doing employee trainings, we're doing manager trainings. We're meeting people where they are instead of dictating this is what you have to do. So, I mean, we're getting their buy-in, I think, a lot better than previous attempts on this project.
Thank you.
That was my concern with that.
Can I add a point here? I think one of the lessons that I've learned over the past few years, and one that I think we should continue to hit on, is it's great to work with external partners. We need that expertise, but we need to be able to hold external partners accountable. And that's where writing a good RFP, writing a good scope of work, where we're clearly delineating, okay, this is what is success for us, and here's how we're going to measure it, and here's how we're going to escalate if there's problems within the contract. That's something that we need to be more mindful of in future opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the only thing I have a question is, and ask that as we continue to go through, I know this is very strategic, a lot of questions, a lot of things that you guys are gonna figure out, that we come back to the table. So we're very transparent to everyone that knows what's going on, where we're moving forward with this.
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, in the interest of time, any more questions, anybody? No? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, counselors.
And do we need to close the meeting with a vote or? Motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Yeah, my bad.